Call the meeting to order, and Matt, we go right to communication A, plus you need to, did you want to announce anything about the special meeting to canvas? So I'll leave it to you.
Okay, yes, so canvassing meeting Friday, 12 o'clock. I will be participating virtually in that. You are welcome to meet here in this room if you want. If you want to participate virtually, for those that can make that, just let me know that, and we can do it that way. It does not matter. So the election numbers are just starting to trickle in. I believe it'll be Meeker County that will get us their stuff at 9 a.m. on Friday. So that's where that's at.
If I remember right, these are 5 minutes or less generally?
This meeting, it will be somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 to 5 minutes.
Yeah, so
Correct.
For everybody, it's real quick and fast.
All right, let's go to communication items then. Mary, you're up.
Hey everyone, good to see you all in the changing of seasons today. Notice on the slideshow up there, I'll just walk through that. I wanted to bring you some pictures to update the communications lab since we haven't been able to get you in to see that, and it's very well underway. So just to begin with, a great big kudos to our family, staff, students, and community for supporting everything that we're doing in front of and behind the scenes to do what's best for kids and to make sure that all of our learners, whether remote, in person, in quarantine, or any mixture thereof, know that they're loved and they're still part of our family. Just to recap kind of how Fridays have been going at the elementary school with hybrid learning. We just finished our second Friday of that hybrid learning. Just wanted to let you all know and let the community know that we appreciate that time. We're preparing materials, we're reaching out to families, we're providing support on an individual level to kiddos. We're working as a team to plan instruction. And with last Friday came the end of our first quarter just yesterday. So report cards are being wrapped up and we're looking forward to a successful second quarter. Here's our communications lab. Notice the awesome setup in there. Hybrid means that for us, our 5th grade students in Mr. Wolf's class are now using our communications lab as a classroom. So initially this space was meant to be used for all students, but we're not quite there yet with the current model of learning. So in the future, all of our kiddos will be able to use this space. It features some abilities to cast. You can tell on the large TV screens in the picture. We have an audio booth that's being set up. Thanks to Mr. Bullard for coming over and working on how to get that microphone set up just right. We'll be video streaming. We can do slow-mo animation, and we can do some morning announcements live instead of over the loudspeaker in the office through the telephone, which is our current method. So those are all things that we're looking forward to. You can kind of see in this picture that there's a bar height table on the right-hand side beneath those 4 blue windows. The windows lead to our media center, so it's directly connected to the media and STEAM space. And then we have tables of varying heights spread throughout the room. This picture shows Mr. Gardner working with Mr. Wolf's students. You can see that they're able to socially distance for our COVID requirements. And it's just a really nice working space where kids are kind of flexible in their seating and able to use devices and plan some pretty exciting things. Here's a group of young ladies that took some of their recess time to order and research some fabric. Those 4 windows that we just talked about need to have some curtains in place. And lo and behold, some of our 5th grade students have a passion for sewing. So of course they're together right now, but that would happen in less than 15 minutes. And they're placing orders, they're measuring. They have an Amazon order in just today to get enough fabric to cover those 4 curtains. And they have the tension rods that'll hold the curtains in place. It's just a wonderful testament to how we're involving our students in the building and ownership of this space. Here you see some students that are working on the audio booth table. They're using hand tools in this picture, but they also learned how to use powered drills, cordless drills and things like that that are found in our makerspace area. This is a picture, a collage of photos that were taken by Mr. Wolf's students using our GoPros. Part of the funding that we received, thanks to the Community Foundation grant, was used to purchase these GoPros. So all of the kiddos were wandering around outside and taking pictures with different perspectives. And then they turned them into a GoPro photo and video slide. And if you follow Mr. Wolf on Twitter, that's his handle, you'd be able to see this animated. So just really, really interesting things for kids to do. and learn about. Up next for our communications lab is working on videos of biomes, being able to cast to those TVs, some podcasting and things like that. Our fifth graders are excited to set it up, to use it, and then hopefully at some point in the school year to be mentors for our younger kids and learn right along with them and teach them the tools of the trade. We're moving on to Kindness Week this week. So we have our 7 mindsets, attitude of gratitude. We kind of shifted the order of things so that we could tie these two together. And we have a bunch of activities planned for our kiddos just to focus on random acts of kindness and how we can be kind to one another and how it improves our well-being and the emotional well-being of those around us. Part of that meant that our 4th graders created flag posters, and then you can see some of our wonderful staff members hanging the flags over at the Legion to commemorate our veterans and just to show our appreciation for them. So special thanks to all of our veterans on Veterans Day tomorrow. And finally, we have our 3rd grade wax museum coming up on Thursday. Look for videos of that. I believe it'll be on the talk of Paynesville. Pictures will be in the press. We're going to do a little mini snippet on Facebook Live coming up. We have to do this digitally because we just can't have families come in like they have in the past. But kudos to our 3rd grade team and our tech department for working together to make that work for our kids. That's it from the elementary school. Any questions?
Thanks, Mary.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Great presentation.
Mr. Erline.
All right, good evening. Just a few things to talk about. We are in our restrictive hybrid model, so we have about 50% of the students in the building each day. That seems to be going pretty well. We are really working at trying to make accommodations for our most needy students, and so that we do have some students that are there more than 2 days a week. And as we started second quarter today, we really didn't have a whole lot of changes. We've had some students that have opted for remote learning this quarter, but we've also had a number of students who have asked if they could come back into the hybrid model. So it's kind of a give and take a little bit, and so we're still working through some of that. Second quarter did start today, and as you know, we have cut our schedule in half, and so the A day really was a semester's worth in a quarter, and so grades will be out soon, and it seems to have gone well. We'll continue it with the B days for second quarter, and then depending on what our learning model looks like, we'll probably end up continuing that for the remainder of the school year. For our Veterans Day program, of course, we were unable to have our traditional program that we would have. So tomorrow we have our boys and girls stater, Macy Elfring and Mitchell Bertram, have recorded a short program. Thanks to Matt Dickhausen for setting up the studio for that. And then during first block, all teachers are going to be showing a movie called Taking Chance, and that so that will all be during first hour. The students who are remote, I actually sent all of our students the link to each of those just a few minutes ago, and so they'll have an opportunity to see that at home if they choose to. Hopefully they do choose to. We had our digital curriculum teachers who from the elementary and high school who presented on the work that they had done over the summer and in the fall. And as we get further into the school year and we get some of those staff members to present on some of those ideas that they came up with and doing some staff development time, and then we'll get some teachers in from the elementary and secondary to go through some things with you guys if that works out. I do not have a slideshow, but I have a real live person. I have Jesse Rasmussen, who is going to talk a little bit about the eSports Club and how that's going and how it all got started. He really talked to Mr. Maher and I, and before he could even finish it, we were saying yes. And it's just been something that is it's a niche for more of our students and more inclusion, and that's what we're looking for. So, Mr. Rasmussen, you want to come up
What, do you
there?
want me to talk now? Sure. Do you want me to take the hot seat? Is that how this works?
And then you could cast a TV20.
TV20?
Yeah. If
Let's see if this works. If not, I'll have to just do it the Orline way. TV24?
nope, 20.
Oh no,
No.
I don't see it.
No. Okay.
I see CC1, CC3, CC7. Yeah.
No, that's fine.
Sweet. I could do that. That's all right. Unless I shared it to the wrong person. Oh no. Sorry for the wait. I know we're in the middle of bad weather, so I won't take too long.
You're okay.
Can I ask a question while we're reading?
You bet.
So in regards to, I know this is not obviously the only metric to look at is grades, but as first quarter grades are coming in, is there a sense of how that's looking in comparison to prior years? And again, I don't mean to say that's the only metric by any means, but I'm just curious, like.
Yeah, so Mr. Orline and I have talked about that at the secondary level, and as soon as all grades are all finished, that is something that we're going to put together and take a look at it. I mean, the sense in talking with Mr. Orline is I don't think there's going to be a big discrepancy.
Okay.
I do know one of the big things is even the student discipline side of things are significantly down from comparable years and stuff, and maybe you want to add more to that.
Yeah, and I think what we've learned in the process last spring and moving into this fall is our teachers have really been have a lot of empathy for our students, and grades are great. That's the system that we are strapped with at this point. But I think that there's really been a shift in what those grades look like. And so I think it'll be good. I think teachers got through as much as they could, and we're learning to kind of look at 80% of what's important and concentrating on that. So I think it'll be comparable.
More to come.
Yes, thank you.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you for inviting me here tonight. So there is, just sort of to set the stage, there's this big sort of wave that's sweeping high schools, and we'll talk about more numbers. But colleges, as well as professional scene, and this idea of esports. And this is sort of something that I've wanted to start for the last few years, and sort of the stars never sort of aligned for me. But they aligned this year. A bunch of things came together where I was able to start it up. And so I want to talk to you about what it is and what we do and why it's important, why I think this is good for our school. So esports is this, so a lot of you who are familiar, esports refers to like organized video game competitions. These are kids playing video games, but they are competing against other schools. And so I just came from we have a match every Tuesday. I just came from our match where we competed on another school from another state. We ended up splitting with them. We both won a game. But it started very early, a long time ago in 1980, but it sort of really picked up steam. And kind of where esports is now. So as of, this is a little outdated, but as of right now, there are 13,000 players that signed up with the platform that we play with. There's over 1,000 schools. The last I heard, there are 30 schools in Minnesota that compete on this one platform alone. And so, it's picking up steam. The lady I talked to said they're adding more schools every day that are getting involved. Our school right now currently has 25 students enrolled. They show up. I have never seen these kids more dedicated to anything in their lives. We had practice. I kid you not. They asked me if we could have practice on Monday when we don't have school. I asked if we could have practice on Friday when we don't have school. They were here Monday when we, they're driving themselves. They're getting their parents. They're begging their parents. They're coming into this thing. Today we had 17 people in the middle school computer lab, socially distancing as best as we can, and they're in there. They're involved. They're excited about this. So it's really sort of a kind of a powerful thing. So just to kind of set the stage, esports is different than video games, because I know video games has a stereotype of kids going home not doing their homework and just playing video games all night. So the difference is video games is something you do alone in your basement, right? It's recreational. You do it to kill time. Esports is different. Esports is competitive. It's structured. It's team-based. We do the exact same thing that traditional sports do. We have drills. We watch VODs, or we watch film. We do everything else. We scrim other teams. It's very competitive. It requires a lot of really the same skills that a lot of traditional sports do. So the things we like about sports, we like competition, right? We like students to be able to compete, live up to their best, to have that grit, that resilience. We love the community that comes with sports, being involved in a team, being involved with other people who love to do the same thing. We love teamwork, and we love storylines, right? We love that storyline of we have this rivalry with Eden Valley, and maybe we weren't able to beat them for 5 years, but finally we beat them. And so there's this great storyline that comes with sports. Esports is the same thing. It has the exact same stuff that traditional sports have. There is a great, really high level of competition. The game that we play has a very high, I call skill cap. It's very hard to be very good at it. Professionals are ridiculous at this game. There's a community involved, and not just with parents, which we want to draw more in while we try to stream the games. But with our players, these are kids who are traditionally not overly involved at school. I've had a lot of teachers stop in and say, I can't believe they're here. I can't believe that so-and-so student is spending the night here and staying after school to practice and to be involved in an activity. And so I've heard that time and time again. Teamwork is a huge thing. I have one of the quietest kids I've ever met said about 2 words to me in all of class, and he is what we call the voice of our team. He is now the kid that's in teamwork and leading out and telling our team where to go and what objectives to take and stuff like that. So it's fun seeing these kids grow as we do this. And there's the same storylines if you ever watch esports. I encourage you, if you're interested, you can go watch professional esports games. They're exciting. I think they're. So a couple things about this. One of the things that why esports is good for us. We can encourage student achievement in these students. Now that they're here and they're involved, we can ask them to maintain their GPA in order to compete. So if they want to be part of the team, they have to maintain that GPA. That gives them a reason to go to school. It gives them a reason to be passionate about their classes if they want to be involved in something they're passionate about. Right now, I'll show you a slide later. There's $15 million currently in scholarships that is available to kids who are good at video games, who are good at esports. You can go to a major college on a full ride playing a video game. Right, there are plenty of careers, not just careers in esports, but careers in such things as coding, casting, video skills. There's lots to do with leadership and teamwork and getting kids who aren't normally leaders in the school to come out and be leaders. Digital citizenship is a big thing in this as well, being good on the internet. Life skills that this brings, teamwork skills, competing as a team, talking about it, conceptual thinking. Resiliency is something that we all love about sports. We love that story of, well, you're down in the fourth quarter and you need to find that grit and come back and do it. Esports has that same sort of deal. And sportsmanship, learning to win well and to lose graciously. Some of the careers that this sort of ties into, so there's over $15 million in scholarships available for people in esports. I think the fact that our school does not tap into that is almost criminal. There are kids already doing this. They go home, they sit in their basement, they play video games, but to bring them here and to do it competitively, give them that opportunity to do something that they're passionate about and good at and get them a scholarship. So I won't read these all off to you, but these are just some careers that esports sort of links into. Here's what we do. So there are 2 seasons. So we play all year round. We have practice 5 nights a week. That computer lab is open. I got about 15 kids in there every night, 5 nights a week. We compete right now. We're in the middle of our fall season. Right now we have matches every Tuesday. We've competed 4 times so far. Our team is 5-3. Right now, with most of these kids having only played the game for a couple weeks. So it's pretty impressive. And then right here, so we'll take a break and then we'll start up our second season here. So that's sort of a little bit about esports, like why I think it's good for the school, why I think it's amazing. The stars sort of aligned this year, and so we were able to get this going for a super low startup cost, and so it's great to draw interest without any sort of negative buy. You know what I'm saying? We didn't have to overly invest in to get it going.
Questions for Jesse?
I can see why you said yes before he was done. Very good.
You mentioned that you're in a particular group nationwide. Are there several of those groups? And I guess my question would be, is the Minnesota State High School League looking at sanctioning this as a activity, or is there a sanctioning, or how do you, when you got different groups out there, how do you focus?
So the company we go through is called PlayVS. PlayVS is sanctioned in a bunch of states. They are part of the national. I wish I brought that information. They are not currently aligned with the Minnesota State High School League, but they're working on it right now. So there is no esports that's connected with the Minnesota State High School League, and PlayVS is working on getting them involved. But they're involved in the national level.
What would be the merits of being involved with the State High School League? You have all the scholarships there.
Yeah, right.
You have the career building. I didn't see anything that's missing, unless I'm missing something here.
No, I mean
don't see the relevance actually.
Yeah, kids are here. They're involved.
Mm-hmm.
They're loving it. They're passionate about it. They're going to do it anyways. Now they get to come here and they get to compete. They get to have that storyline that they didn't have before because they're not involved in football or baseball. They get to say like, "Hey, we had a great match. We got people, talked about it with each other." So,
Are you seeing a mixture of kids, like kids who are in other sports and kids who don't participate in anything, or are they pretty much a clique of their own?
I have a couple kids who are yes and no. I have a couple kids who are involved in other activities, and then who are just like not involved. So I have a couple football players that had come up and said, "I want to do this. I want to be involved, but can I get involved after the football season's over?" And the answer is always yes, right? Come and show up afterwards. So I've had a couple people like that. I have certain other players that are involved in other sports that'll take those seasons off and be involved in this when they can. And so, yeah, we see that. And then there's that other side of the population of like students who aren't involved in anything. Like literally nothing. As soon as that bell rings, they're the first ones on the bus or the first ones in the car and they're gone. And now they're here till 5:30 every night practicing.
So do you see this as a good mixer then for those kids?
I think so. I think it's a great mixture of kids. So we have middle schoolers, we have high schoolers.
So no real limitation of the kids. No limitation of their ability.
No.
So if they're just starting and they don't know much about it, they're going to participate like everybody else.
Absolutely, right?
So
they'll
really no bench
practice.
warmers.
Yeah. So we have right now. So I had to enroll a number of teams when the season started. And so I enrolled 2 teams. So I knew that I could compete with 2 teams and run it as like a varsity and a junior varsity competition.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I did. I have 10 spots. We have a little more than 10 people. And so in the future, I could enroll a 3rd team. I just didn't because I didn't think we'd be able to fill it every week. So there's the way that this company works is it's the same cost regardless of how many teams you enroll. And so we could like buy into PlayVS. We could enroll 15 teams if everybody in the school wanted to compete that much. There's no additional cost for that.
Gender breakdown.
Gender
what I was
breakdown.
gonna ask.
I have yes. It is predominantly males. I do have 2 females. I would like to get more. I would like to recruit more females. I think as the program grows, I'd like to see that. Like that's a group that I'm actively recruiting to try to find people that are in that. Right now, it's mostly males. Yep. If you know any females that would be interested in this,
I would
please let them know.
assume that's statistical on the esports platform as well, but
Yeah.
it's primarily male.
Most pros in the sport, in the esport that I follow, or in the game that we play and I follow, most pros that I know are male. There are quite a few female streamers, but I don't know too many female pros that are on North American teams. And so it tends to be pretty typical. Again, like that's something that I would love to change. I would love to have 30 females in that room and everybody passionate about it. I can't force them to join.
So you had mentioned something about like requirements similar to like Minnesota State High School League. You have to have a certain GPA. Is that the similar? Like they have to meet certain standards to be able to.
So currently, for the system, for the people we go through, no. But for me, yes.
Okay.
So in order to play on any of our varsity or JV teams, you can't be failing any classes. They're welcome to come and practice. They're welcome to come and hang out and scrim and do that. But in order to compete on either of our varsity or JV levels, they have to maintain GPA. So they can't be failing.
Is this stuff they can practice at home, or does it have to be on equipment here or on software?
So all of the games that they currently have are only played on PC. So a computer. So anybody with a computer can play this game all the time. It's the game we picked. I picked because it's the #1 game in the world. It has the most scholarships available to it, so the people who are good at it. It has the most skill ceiling for people to go. People who play this game competitively, they're $1 million contracts. Like there are a bunch of NA players that make multi-million-dollar contracts playing this game. And so I thought it was a good fit. Plus it runs on really low specification computers. So we joke, we say it can run on a toaster. And so that way, like, we didn't have to buy supercomputers getting into this thing to be competitive. We can be competitive with the equipment we had here. And so yes, they can totally play at home. It would require internet. We found a way that they can play on their Chromebooks through a web platform. And so they can even play with their Chromebooks at home. And so we've sort of eliminated a lot of those barriers to playing.
Has the press done? I haven't seen anything in the press about this.
Yeah.
Have
you talked to them
Mike
about?
was just there on Monday, I think. So, last week. I'm sorry. I'm losing track of my dates. Mike was there last week. I think it'll run this Thursday.
Okay.
Is what he said. Yep. Yeah, we want our next step, and I'm sorry to take a lot of your time, and I won't. Our next step is we really want to stream the games. And so we want, as they're competing, we want to be able to stream the games. We're just not quite there yet. And we want to, be able to have parents log in and watch their kids compete. That's awesome. And we don't have to go anywhere. We can compete every week. I don't have to get the kids on a bus. We come here, we compete. They go home by 5:30. They're done. They go home. They work on their homework, right? And this thing is a win all the way around, at least in my opinion. So
Very interesting.
Growing up, I was a gamer, and back when internet was really slow and whatever, and it's embarrassing because, but I remember reading recently that the gaming industry made more money than the music and movie industries combined in the last few years.
Oh yeah.
So, I mean, it's a huge, it's just kind of silly to not be involved at all.
Yeah, if you just Google esports, you'll find Business Insider articles talking about people should invest in esports. It's the next big thing. So the fact that we can get Paynesville tied into that and give these kids those opportunities to be involved, that's great. Get them involved and they'll get those skills that they would get from playing a sport in a different way, something that they're good at and competitive in.
And 25 students is a lot. That's bigger than some of our varsity teams. So I think
absolutely.
The more we can get students who maybe traditionally aren't doing activities, doing things, I think that's awesome. We need to do more of that.
And this is just my philosophy, but the more we get kids involved in here and the more they're tied in and invested in this place in some way, the better that is for education, the better that is for their grades. That is a win. A loss is a kid who doesn't care about Paynesville, who doesn't care about school, who can't wait to leave, and then they get on the bus and they go home. Right? A win is finding a way for those kids to want to be here after school and get involved and then tie them in other ways.
Excellent.
I would add that Jesse has started this program voluntarily and is donating his time at this point, so we appreciate that.
Pretty cool.
Awesome. Thank
That's
you.
pretty
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, of course.
Yes.
Yeah. Hey, thanks you guys.
Thanks, Jesse.
Thanks everybody.
Max?
I'm from the Atari Club.
I go back that far.
I still got it.
It's nice.
So I think David alluded to the fact when Jesse came and approached us for the esports, the answer was obviously yes right away. And I can attest to sitting outside in the cafeteria when they get done with practice. I've had numerous conversations with students that I've never seen here after the school day is over. And furthermore, people that I've tried to talk to about various things just make conversation, and these kids wouldn't even stop talking about, I don't understand the game, I need to watch it. But they're telling me all these nuances about this game. They're excited to be here. And Mr. Bowler knows I've always advocated for activities for kids, because when they are involved in things, regardless of what it is, all the statistics will show that their student achievement is going to go up. So That's a fantastic thing. I don't have any agenda to discuss right now. Things are kind of changing really on the daily. If you're paying attention to the news, you'll hear so-and-so school is, quarantined for 2 weeks and so on and so forth. So that's kind of the mode of activities that we're getting ready to operate under is, we're very aware that at any given point, one of our own teams might have to quarantine because of COVID and be out for 2 weeks. We're to the point right now, at least in the football season, that if that would happen, that would be the end of the season because we're just about into the playoffs. Volleyball, because they go into December, they have a little bit of time, but that's something that we've discussed as a staff, that if that happens, we just need to stop, hit the reset button and start back up. And it's really about the activities that we want to offer for the students. We realize that it's not the normal as what it has been, but the same thing that we just talked about with the esports, we want to provide those opportunities so those students that are passionate about those activities at least can experience it to a degree. And some of you might know some people who are involved in those things, and they want to be involved in them even though they are different. For instance, speech, right? They just had a Zoom meeting, our conference did, and they're trying to decide. They're waiting as long as possible to see if they can do something in person or if it's virtual. But, our speech coach says he has students that are asking him, what is the plan? They realize it's not going to be the same, but they're very appreciative that the school board has allowed us to push forward with these activities in the safest manner as possible. And I can attest to the fact that it is a massive, I don't know if I can say headache because that's a symptom of COVID, but it's a pain in the rear end on a daily basis. I don't know that we've had a week yet that everything that's been on the schedule has worked out that way. And people have been super understanding and flexible, and we do our best to try to get the word out as much as possible. But things are really changing daily, and we anticipate that that's going to be the same, especially as we go through the winter season. So I don't know if anybody has any questions, but there really hasn't been a lot of change in any of the activities as far as how we're going to operate, which is probably the first time that I've reported to you that there hasn't been some kind of change or season that has been manipulated.
Has there been any update on the wrestling season?
As far as
Is it going to go on?
Yes. Wrestling will start November 30th, I think, is the date. And so just like the other activities, they're allowed two contests per week. And so wrestling will be quite a bit different than in the past because they'll only be allowed to have duels or triangulars. There'll be no large individual tournaments. And so, that will continue to go on. And just like the other activities, there's no plan for any kind of state tournament or anything like that, but they're set to get started.
Any questions for Max?
Thank you.
Thanks, Max.
All right, good evening. Just a few things on the community ed general realm. COVID, of course, keeps continuing to affect us and what we can and can't offer. We'll be offering our first hybrid driver's ed program, starts tomorrow. So we're looking at more and more adult virtual programs and small group youth activities. We've kind of adjusted some basketball things to smaller groups, camp style, just because of the limitations we have. Pause, we're currently full again with 110 registered. The ECP, the Emergency Care Program, is in full force, providing care for our Tier 1 employees on the hybrid days. We are starting to have attendance affected, just like in the elementary school, just because of quarantines and that kind of stuff for COVID, but we do have large numbers in pause. Fitness center, we're starting to see some usage picking up now. It's getting a little bit colder and people coming back, but our numbers still are way down compared to usual now at this time. Live stream report, we have just under 12,000 views going into tonight's game for this season. Our team's doing a good job. We started streaming volleyball games simultaneously on YouTube and Facebook. And we had one volleyball game. It was the game where we went into five sets with Eden Valley. It was quite a game. If you didn't catch that one, we had 2,000 views by the time the next day came around. So that's our top views for this year so far for the fall. And we have a new 8th grader. I'm going to have to take off right after this because he's doing our first play-by-play tryout on JV for volleyball tonight. So we're streaming right now. JV, where usually they just stream through the huddle camera. We're actually, our Lease, our main announcer, is mentoring him, and he's doing play-by-play commentary right now on the JV game. Winter broadcast season, we kind of finalized what we hope to broadcast, knowing like what Max said. We just kind of go with the flow of when we can broadcast because games get canceled or moved. And I did send out our sponsor packet yesterday, and in one day we're just about filled with all of our sponsor slots. So we're getting good community support for that. So any questions for me? No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Johnny?
Hello, everyone. Well, we continue to wipe things down with COVID, and we now have all the bathrooms retrofitted with new automatic flushers and touchless faucets throughout the district. I think we have one left in the nurses' station at the other school, and then we should be complete. We've been messing around all day with heat in the new shops. It's like Yule showed up about 2:30 today and tried to fix it, and he blamed that onto the installers, and this went on and on. I'm not sure if they still got heat in the shops yet as of right now, but if not, they'll be back tomorrow morning. The roof on the new forecourt gym is about half done, and it's too bad it snowed, but we're going to have a little work tomorrow, I imagine. What else did I have? Well, I don't. Just walking through the shops today, I'm impressed with the amount of equipment they have that I wish we would have had when we were in school. A lot of that stuff is just unbelievable. And we still have no custodian yet. We haven't had an application, the last 2 months. And I think that's about all I've got tonight. Any questions?
Yeah, just out of curiosity, so you have trouble with the heating in there, right? Yep. We got a new facility going up, we have 2 people involved. Is there a cost to the district to figure out how it's heated? So that kind of falls into them making sure their job works, right, Matt? Right.
Yeah, so Site Logic is in the middle of dealing with that.
They seem to watch out for us pretty nicely. I like them.
Yeah, it's Buell and Widener's are both working on it, and it's going to be resolved. It's just a matter of
well, nothing's perfect. It's just that I would hate to think that we're forking anything out on that.
No,
it's all in the controls. And same thing tonight. I just got home and walked in, and I got a phone call that there's water leaking in the new wood shop. And I just called BCI, and he was right there. He said, "I'll take care of it." So I'm not sure if it was a pipe or if it was the roof, but they're good at what they do.
Good.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thanks. Well, Matt, you're going to jump ahead a little
right.
to see you then.
Yes, we will skip ahead when we get Jody on the phone here. Jody, are you still with us?
I think you're answering.
You're breaking up. You're still breaking up on this end. No, I can't. Sounds like an electronic Jody.
She's been taken over by a robot.
Let me try this. Can you hear me now at all? Oops, I'm sorry. Try it again. Yeah, no.
Can he reconnect?
Yeah, just kind of.
Do you want to try hanging up and call back in?
We're gonna take this again.
That's what computers were when I was younger, for years. When you had any trouble, you just turned it off, started up again, and 99% time was fixed.
Not like the old TVs, you just whack it alongside.
Yeah.
I did that once. I got a giant shock. Didn't know they were going.
Jody? Okay, you're coming through my computer fine. I'm gonna hang this phone up and just try getting you back on here. Sorry about this, just give me a second.
Put no tinfoil on the rabbit ears.
I wonder how much snow we're gonna come out to.
I don't know. I think we've got our 2 already.
Roads look great coming from my place on the way, doesn't it? A little dicey.
Yeah, it was a little
Welcome
slippery.
to Google Meet. Enter the meeting. Thank you. You're joining a call with 3 other people.
That was me. Sorry about that. Jody, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Hey. Look at
Can you hear
that.
me too?
You bet.
Yay! How are you guys?
Good. I think I can speak for everyone and say we're good. Yeah. We're wondering if you're gonna come shovel.
Are you using snowmobiles to get home yet, or how's it going up there?
Well, it's snowing,
Yeah.
so.
All right.
Okay, so let me just go over just a couple things here, Jody, then I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Perfect.
So basically this evening, what we would like to do here is we want to talk a little bit more about facility improvement discussion that started last month. There is, in your agenda, there are 3 attachments. One is a softball rendering. We'll get to that. I just wanted you guys to be able to see that. Again, it's very preliminary. There's no decisions actually made. It's just physically getting something on paper to start a conversation. There's also information regarding synthetic turf. There's nothing scientific about what is provided to you. I did a little bit of research as far as the whole injury question, because I think that's something that frequently comes up. So there's some of that information. We also, New London Spicer shared their information from their turf project. So New London Spicer's information is there. And then there's a variety of information that is from the different manufacturers and vendors. And so it's just, again, it's just information. So people can start doing a little bit of reading on it. There's nothing magical about what's provided. And I'm hoping tonight, actually, one of the pieces of this conversation is going to be giving me some more information about what other information the board feels like they need in order to continue this conversation and make a decision as far as what direction the district wants to go. The reality is we have a track right now that is up for repair. And I think we alluded to it last month. I believe Rick was the one who basically made the statement that if you're going to ever be exploring turf, now's the time with that track being needing to be repaired, and also the football field having the crown issue and needing some repair as well. So we really need to take a look at that and decide what direction we are planning on going for the future. Really, now's the time that decision needs to be made. Okay? So tonight, I have been in conversation with Ellers, and both Jody and Greg have been assisting and talking through kind of where my perspective is and where I see things. So I had asked Jody to just simply come tonight to visit with the board about the tools and kind of that 20,000 foot view of what the possibilities are. We are not in anywhere to a point where we even have an actual hard, firm proposal for a project cost. So it's really hard to talk specifics about this is exactly what the cost is. But at this point, I do think it's good information for the board to gather as far as how districts have gone about these type of facility projects and what tools are available for them. And obviously, Ellers and Jody particularly has a lot of experience working with a lot of different school districts, and so she can provide some insight to that. So I thought we could start with Jody. Then after that, we can get back to the turf conversation. We can also talk about that softball piece, and then we can kind of determine what other information we need and what we want next steps to look like. That sound reasonable? Okay, Jody.
All right, sounds great. So everybody has the information in front of them then, and there are slide numbers that's in the bottom right-hand corner that I'll refer to as I go through the overview, but we will talk about an overview of the tools that are available. Different than companies, school districts can't just go to a local bank and take out a loan, so you do need to use one of the financing tools authorized by statute if you're going to finance a capital project. So fortunately, the legislature has provided you with a number of different tools, and what we're seeing as a growing trend in school districts is for districts to mix and match the different financing tools to accomplish the projects that they need to complete and want to complete. So we think talking about these earlier rather than later is really helpful and being planful about the process. So we're happy to kind of provide an overview on these tools tonight. And I will turn then to the third page, and these are the tools that are available for capital projects in school districts. And you have used most of these tools, some of them more recently than others, but school building bonds are an option, and we're through that election recently. Operating referendum, capital project levy, which are voter-approved tools that you have in place that have been approved by your voters. Long-term facilities maintenance is a little bit newer program, but you're using that right now to finance projects. And capital facilities bonds, it's been a while since you have had capital facilities bonds in place, but those are available to you. Lease purchase financing, a lease levy, and then abatement bonds. And so if you turn to page 4, this we think is a really helpful handy reference tool. So it's a chart showing those tools that I just mentioned. And you'll see at the top of the chart there, building bonds, and we're showing the different type of projects that you can finance with each of these tools. And you'll see the building bonds really check all the boxes. So if you get voter approval, this is really the most flexible financing tool that you have available to you. We also talk about whether voter approval is required, if there's an additional property tax impact, does it qualify for the ag school building bond credit, and then limitations, maximum borrowing, and other notes related to each of the tools. So we just think this is a nice handy reference tool as you're thinking about different projects and what tools are available, and then other information that you might want to know about the tool. At the bottom of the chart there is abatement bonds, and that's really the least flexible financing tool that's available to school districts. You'll see that there's only one box checked there for project types because they're only allowed to be used to finance parking lots for school districts. So then turning to page 5, these are the projects that we've been discussing with Matt and the projects that are on your mind. And so the indoor air quality project at the elementary school, I know that's been talked about for a number of years. And we really feel like the tool that would be best for financing those projects would be long-term facilities maintenance. And then with respect to some of the athletic field updates that are being considered that we think could be DIC tools, long-term facilities maintenance for any of the deferred maintenance components of that project. Capital facilities bond definitely would be something to consider. And then we know that the community is considering fundraising and getting some donations for some of the projects. So then with respect to the turf field, there's really 2 options. Most common recently is the lease purchase lease levy that districts have been using to finance turf fields, but capital facilities bonds are also an option. And then of course, as listed at the bottom of the page, any of the tools can be financed by school building bonds, but you need to have an election for that. And many times for these types of projects, because you have other tools in place, districts do proceed with some of these tools other than a school building bond option. So then giving a little bit more background information, which I think will be helpful as we talk about some of the different tools and options. And I think because it's interesting to see the makeup of your tax base, you'll see that your overall market value is shown in that first section. And then referendum market value, which is the tax base that your operating referendum is spread against. So this tells you that as you are collecting revenue through operating referendum levy, these are the different types of property owners that are paying for that levy. So residential homes pay about 62% of any operating referendum levies that are in place. You'll see that ag properties do not pay toward an operating referendum, and I know most of you are familiar with that, but just to reiterate that again, they only pay on a house, garage, and 1 acre. And then seasonal rec is virtually excluded from paying on operating referendums also. Just some more commercial seasonal rec properties do pay toward that. And then most of your levies are spread on your net tax capacity value of your district. So the school building bond referendum, for example, those debt service levies are spread against these values. So you can see in this case, your residential homeowners are paying about 31%. Your qualifying ag properties represent 27% of that tax base, but they are eligible then for the ag credit, which is very helpful to them. And then seasonal rec at about 15%. So just kind of interesting to see this because the levies are spread on these different tax bases, and any bonded debt that is outstanding does qualify for that ag credit. And because you have a pretty significant share of ag property, I think that's important to know and be aware of. So then turning to page 7, just to give you a sense for where you're at now. I know we've looked at this a couple of different times over the years, but on a home with an estimated market value of $160,000, which is about the average in your school district, you can see that Paynesville is still on the lower end of this comparative chart with your neighboring school district, below the group average and well below the state average. So currently on a $160,000 home, the school taxes in Paynesville are $583, and you can see how the other districts stack up. So turning to page 8 then, just a little reminder again about the school building bond agricultural credit, because this is really important in your community with the level of ag property that you have. And I know we talked about it during the bond referendum process, but it was still relatively new and it's been increasing, which is great. So again, this is provided to agricultural property owners. Applies to all of the bonded debt that you have outstanding. You can see the different types of agricultural properties that are eligible for the credit. And then again, just a reminder that the credit right now is at the 50% level, but scheduled to increase to 70% by taxes payable in 2023. It did start at a 40% level, and I think there were a lot of skeptics thinking, oh gosh, will this program really stay in place? And in fact, it has, and the legislature has increased the credit. This is an ongoing credit. Ag property owners don't need to apply or do anything to make sure that they get that deducted from their property taxes. And the credit is paid for by the state, and as it's been implemented, they have not shifted that burden to other categories of property owners like they have in the past when they implemented some changes to our complex property tax system. So then we'll get into a little bit more information about each of the tools. So any questions on some of the overall information, overview, background kind of information, anything that I've covered so far that you want to ask about?
I don't see any, Jody.
Go ahead.
Okay, we'll keep going then. So school building bonds, again, broadest authority, most flexible. You know that you need to have voter approval, qualifies for the ag credit, and you remember that you needed to go through the review and comment process with that for projects over $2 million. So turning to page 10 then, there's definitely advantages to school building bonds. You know that you were able to get a really nice low interest rate. You participated in the state credit enhancement program. You get additional revenue. We don't have to have a level payment structure necessarily. We have that wraparound structure, which has been really helpful in providing flexibility. There is debt service equalization aid available. Paynesville does not qualify at the level of debt that you have outstanding. And again, school building bond agricultural credit applies to that. Disadvantages that we talk about with respect to the financing process for the building bond generally results in an increase in taxes. You do need to get voter approval, and you'll recall that it is a time-consuming, and there's a lot of steps involved in the process. So we just kind of wanted to remind you again where we ended up when your bonds were issued. So this is your detailed debt plan right now. You can see that we got that nice low interest rate up in the left-hand corner to 2.54%, which allowed us to have a lower tax rate than we were expecting in our pre-election estimate. So in that far right-hand column, you can see the tax rate there. We were planning on that being level at about 15.1% over the whole life of the bond issue. And now we are under the 15% level, and we were able to build in a step down in that tax rate. And we talked about a couple of different options before we sold the bonds, and that was something that the board thought that you wanted to take advantage of, and we did. And so you can see now how we're expecting those debt service levies to play out over time. So that has turned out very well, and we're really pleased with the results of that. And then on page 13, you'll see that graphical view. So again, we were expecting to be a little bit above 15%. We did not go above that, and we stayed in our projected to stay a little under, and then we'll have that step down that comes into play with taxes payable in 2025. So next, we thought we would just kind of give you a little background information. You do have an operating referendum in place. You can use this for capital project costs, but most districts just use it for their day-to-day operating costs. Your current authority is a pretty small dollar amount per pupil. So it was a higher level when the voters approved it, but as the legislature has implemented the local optional revenue category, they've reduced the voter-approved operating referendum by a corresponding amount if the district has that revenue in place. So your current authority is now down to $39.25. It does expire after taxes payable in 2022. So you would need to vote either next November or the following November to renew and/or if you want to consider an increase in that authority. This does qualify for state equalization aid. Because your tax base has been growing, you don't qualify for as much as you used to, but you still do get about 10% of that revenue paid for by the state, and they do provide that aid up to $460 per pupil. This is levied on the referendum market value. So again, if you can think back to that tax-based chart that we provided as information at the beginning of the presentation, you know that your homeowners are paying 62% of this levy and would pay at that level up to $460 per pupil, and you would still get about 10% of that paid for by the state. So the next chart on page 15, I think, again, is interesting and helpful background information for you to know. And this is really the reason why most districts aren't using any operating referendum revenue that they have for capital projects. You can see that the general education formula allowance, which is the primary and largest category of revenue that you get for your day-to-day operation, has not kept pace with inflation. So for the current fiscal year 2021, if the formula had kept pace with inflation, it would be $503 per pupil higher. Something that I know that financing working group that Tom Melcher's been participating in at the state, and many of you have probably heard some of those presentations. They talk about this a lot, that the eroding effect that the primary formula has had on funding education. So you, like other districts, I'm sure, struggle with trying to maintain all of your programs and services, and this is the primary reason. So again, while some of your operating referendum revenue that you have in place or that you might want to consider having in place could be used for capital projects, again, it's not likely that you would be committing that. Most districts don't, because they're just trying to make sure they make ends meet as part of their operating budget. Page 16 then shows you the capital project levy, which you do have a capital project levy in place, and I think that's been very, very helpful to Paynesville. It's about $300,000 annually. That too is set to expire relatively soon, so after taxes payable in 2023. Unlike an operating referendum, you can vote to renew your capital project levy authority at any time. So with an operating referendum, you can either vote 1 year ahead or the year that it's going to be expiring. A capital project levy you could renew at any time, which is helpful for you, because if you do want to renew or consider an increase in your operating levy, you could take care of the renewal of your capital project levy at the same time. So just helpful for you to know as you think about another possible voter election at some point in the near future. The capital project levy, different than an operating referendum, is spread on net tax capacity. So your homeowners aren't paying as big a share on this levy as they do on your operating referendum. So it's kind of nice to have both of them in place because they impact the taxpayers differently. And then long-term facilities maintenance revenue. So again, this is a little newer program, but allows you to finance your deferred maintenance and health and safety projects that were separate funding categories in the past. And then you are allowed to use this for building remodeling if you have a voluntary pre-K program. On page 18 then, you are able to access additional revenue above the per pupil funding that's provided for these three types of project costs. And so this is why we were targeting long-term facilities maintenance revenue for your elementary indoor air quality project, because you are allowed in most, many districts when they have an indoor air quality project, because it ends up being relatively significant in terms of the project cost, will decide to move forward with bonding within the Lcfm program for that project cost. So on page 19, you can see that you are getting $380 per pupil, again, mainly using that for deferred maintenance projects. There was an old alternative facilities program in place, and about 25 school districts in the state qualified for that program. Those districts are still grandfathered in and have no limit on the dollar amount of Lcfm revenue that they can qualify for. So while this program, it was very welcome and a step in the right direction for all districts in our state, there still are those districts that have unlimited authority to address their facilities needs. And that's very fortunate for them, but not quite a level playing field with respect to the other districts in the state. You can see that there is a state aid and property tax levy component to this financing tool, and right now you qualify for about 30% aid in the Lcfm funding formula. So that's nice to see too. And then as shown at the bottom there, you can finance the projects through the issuance of bonds or pay as you go, which just means that you're using your annual state aid and levy in this program to finance your project costs. And this is the method that Paynesville has been using so far. Most districts with high levels of ag property have issued bonds within this program, mainly because it gives you then that advantage of tax relief through the school building bond agricultural credit. So once you change from a pay-as-you-go levy to debt service levy, then you automatically qualify for that state agricultural credit, which is again advantageous to the ag property owners. Turning to page 20 then, we just list some of the advantages and disadvantages of the Lcfm program. And again, state aid, that's a part of this program, is really helpful, especially to Paynesville, does qualify for the school building bond credit. If you do issue bonds within this category of financing tools, it's general obligation debt, so you attract a nice low interest rate again. There's no election. The legislature has provided you with this financing tool and the ability to access financing for your project costs in these areas. It's a little bit more limited in its use, of course, as compared to some of the other financing tools. And again, your revenue is limited if you're not one of those lucky 25 school districts that qualify for unlimited revenue in this program. There's a couple additional steps in this process, but pretty straightforward now. I'm working with MDE to get through those steps of the process. The next tool then on page 21 is capital facilities bonds, and you can see the different types of tools there. You'll see site improvements listed, and that's one of the reasons that we thought it might be worth considering this option for turf field. So on page 22, you'll see that while you do get upfront cash, just like school building bonds, This tool is revenue neutral. You don't get any additional revenue. When you issue these bonds, you would need to make your payments from an existing general fund source, and most districts commit some of their operating capital revenue to make these payments. And for Paynesville, you're getting operating capital revenue at about $270,000 annually. So advantages of capital facility funds, again, because they're bonds, they're going to qualify for the school building bond agricultural credit. They're general obligation debt, so they attract nice low interest rates. You're not required to have an election. There is a petition process that is provided in statute, but I've never seen anybody actually move forward with a petition to stop the issuance of capital facilities bonds. There's no increase in property taxes. In fact, there's a reduction in property taxes for your AG property owners because they would get the school building bond A credit then. So disadvantages on page 24 of the capital facilities bonds. Again, you don't get any additional levy or revenue authority. And as compared to a lease levy, which we'll talk about next, there are the cost of issuance are generally a little higher with capital facilities bonds, and the approval process has a couple of additional hoops, just like Lcfm. So you need to publish a notice and get commissioner's approval through a letter, through an MDE process, that sort of thing. On page 25, this is the lease purchase financing tool then, which is another option that we mentioned for consideration for your turf fields, and this is very common now for school districts. You know, many school districts have installed turf fields in their districts, and most of them have been financing those with lease purchase financing, either through a lease purchase agreement directly with a financial institution, or you might hear districts talking about issuing COPs, or certificates of participation. So that's just another lease purchase financing tool. It looks a little bit more similar to a bond, but just allows you to move forward with the financing in that way. And we generally evaluate both of these options when we're taking a look at lease purchase financing. So the length of the financing under lease purchase is determined by the useful life of the asset. So MDE has only allowed 10-year terms for lease purchase financing. So for turf lease purchase financing, and so even though you could issue a capital facilities bond for 10 years or for 15 years by law, when you are financing turf fields, the MDE will require a term that's limited to 10 years because generally they expect the turf to last for that period of time. Technically, when you're working with lease purchase financing, the asset or the whatever improvement you're financing is owned by the lessor until the end of the lease term, and then you usually have the option to purchase it for a nominal amount like $1. And then turning to page 26, you can see that the advantages of lease purchase financing, you get upfront cash again, similar to some of the other options that we've been talking about. You can usually get through this process pretty quickly. And the issuance costs are usually relatively low. So because we're generally just working with a, placing this with a financial institution, you don't have to go through the rating process, so there's no fee involved like Moody's when you're issuing bonds, and of course, no election involved as part of lease purchase financing. Disadvantages is that by law, this is on page 27 now, the payments are subject to annual school board appropriation. So from a investor's perspective, they feel like that's a little bit more risky. So the interest rate that you pay when you're financing through lease purchase is higher than the bonds. It's not considered general obligation debt. And then you would need to make your payments from existing resources unless a lease levy is used. And you would be allowed to access lease levy for financing of a turf field. So then, summary of the advantages and disadvantages of the lease is that you do get additional revenue, so different than a capital facilities bond where you're committing other revenue to make those payments. You would have the additional financing to make those payments, or additional funds to make those payments. There's not an election required. You can see some of the disadvantages listed there. And the most important one to know about is that it does not qualify for the A credit. So while all of the bonding options that we've discussed as part of financing tools tonight qualify for the A credit, a lease levy does not qualify for the A credit. So this is on page 29, the lease levy authority that's in place for all school districts in the state of Minnesota. You are able to access up to $212 per pupil unit. A lease levy is spread on net tax capacity. So again, kind of thinking back to that chart where we showed the referendum market values in your district as compared to net tax capacity, this would be spread on net tax capacity, similar to your school building bond debt service levies. So with respect to Paynesville, you have about $54,000 of lease levy authority that you're not accessing at this point in time. And that would finance about $1.3 million in project costs. So then the last one is the abatement bonds. And this is only allowed to be used for parking lots. And I don't think there's any parking lots being considered right now, but just to know if you're hearing other districts issuing abatement bonds, that they would be financing parking lot projects. And a couple more comments relating to that tool. There's a public hearing that's required. Review and comment process is in play if the project is over $2 million. And that is the last of the tools. So again, I think having some of that background information, we hope is helpful to you. We certainly think that you're in a good position financially with the level of debt that you have outstanding being pretty low and lower than anticipated prior to the election for your bond referendum. There are a couple of components of your revenue that your operating referendum, of course, and your capital project levy. We just wanted you, and we know you are aware of those deadlines generally when they would need to be renewed, but just kind of a reminder on that to keep on your radar too.
Questions at all for Jody? She went through a lot of stuff.
I know, and I talk fast, so if there's anything that I covered too quickly, please feel free to let me know, or as you think about it, if you want to funnel any questions through Matt, he can certainly get back in touch with us so that we can clarify and bring information back to you. And of course, you know, whenever you're ready to move forward, we'd be happy to provide you with some more specific details on the different options and how they would play out.
I think Jody brought very good information here to give us an idea of where this could be headed. We still have the project we need to figure out.
Yep.
But at least we have an idea of alternatives that are there.
Yeah, and I think, go ahead, Jody. And I think Jody mentioned it at the beginning of this, but a lot of school districts are taking the approach now that all of these tools need to be evaluated, and any project would maybe be there'd be multiple tools involved. And I think that's the part too that in talking with both Jody and Greg, that is the conversation to be able to really evaluate what is the best potential solution. So the other piece of this conversation that is also going on then is actually coming up with some firm budget numbers, because obviously in order for Jody and Greg to really advise the district, they really need to have firm budget numbers in order to start putting those down and being able to access those tools. So that's going to be the next step as far as the finance side of things is concerned, is as we can move forward and get an actual budget, project budget tied down, then Ellers will be able to move forward with some more specific recommendations and provide some pros and cons as far as why you should maybe consider some tools and maybe why you should disqualify some tools from consideration. So
when we analyze the numbers, are we going to have it broken out? So I have to just take a step back at the moment. For the period of time I've been on the school board, there's been what we felt was an equality issue with the girls softball. Okay, we just grew out of the girls softball and we're analyzing all the other things, which I think is really important here. But in my mind, that has to be an issue we have to address. So when we start looking at the numbers, I think we need to, in my opinion, I would like to see where we look at them separate. Look at how a package works. Find out if that works. But at the end of the day, that's what it's about. Then I know we don't like to talk about it always, but Title IX is still there. How do you justify the football team on a turf field in Title IX? Girls are as important as boys. And I know sometimes with all laws that are out there, sometimes we like to pretend that it's not there. But it is, and we don't want to be worse off on Title IX than we were when we started.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
you know, and I don't know exactly where you go with that, but even though nobody may press us on a Title IX issue, we should still abide by it just on our honor, right?
100% agree. And I think, Bruce, what I hear you saying is it really comes down to we need to probably identify our projects in order of priority.
Yeah.
And I think that is absolutely mission critical to what we're doing, because I would agree with you. If someone's going to ask me what my opinion is as far as the priority of these projects, number one, I would put the track as the most important priority, because while it is not a safety issue right now, if we don't address it, safety issues will emerge from the state of that current track. So for that reason, I would put that number one. I believe the softball complex is the number 2 priority. And then when you talk about synthetic turf, I would put that as the number 3 priority. And so I think, to me, that's what I'm hearing you say is, let's get clear about what our priorities are, and then our priorities can help guide us towards how it is that we're going to potentially finance something, and then ultimately it comes down to what can we afford and what can't we afford. And,
personally, I would number them different. I'd put the priority on the girls softball, just because it's been on the docket for as long as I can remember that we have been trying to figure that out. So that would be my number one. I believe the track is an issue, but I believe the track is used by both genders. Am I wrong, or?
No, you're absolutely right.
So now, that's not getting us in trouble here.
Not until someone gets hurt.
Right.
And it doesn't matter if it's a boy or a girl that gets hurt.
Is a different issue, but we're not in trouble in a Title IX issue.
Correct.
By doing something for both of them. But that would be probably my only numbering issues, but I want to be really careful. One last question for you. New London just had an operating referendum. Did it pass?
I don't believe so.
No.
Okay, so we have an operating referendum coming up here too. So we got to keep that kind of in mind. And every time we have talked about this, and I keep in mind, I'm not saying that we don't look at, we have to look at it. I think it's our job to be totally clear with everybody on exactly where we're at. But we do have to have the operating levy, because I certainly don't want to be in a position where we can't operate. Now, you've managed the budget very nicely. Somewhere in this, we're probably going to have to look at the projections of where we're going to be at with that.
Right.
Because I thought we could renew where we're at without doing anything.
Just about. There's $35 and change. That's above the 724. So I assume for those of you that have been on the board longer, when you went out for that operating referendum, it was $724 plus $39 and change. So it was like $760 something is probably what you advertised to your community that you were going to ask them for per pupil.
Yeah.
And Jody had referenced now this local optional revenue is now in play. And as the state legislature has brought that in and then increased it and changed it over the years, they have taken and deducted, if you are above what they were messing with local optional revenue, they deducted that off of your per pupil operating. That's how Jody is expressing that number of $39 and change, is because of those local operating revenue changes.
Just personally, I'd like to see long-range projections.
Yeah.
You have a really good handle on where we're headed. I think your handle on downstream is really nice, but I'd probably want to be able to see that, because as we're sitting here right now, I thought we had some money put aside for the girls.
Yeah, so and that's
may not be enough money for this project, but
well, that's the beautiful thing about all of this conversation the whole conversation, a good chunk of this can be done with the dollars that are budgeted. So
Okay.
we have roughly right now $1.45 million that are budgeted. It could be as high as 1.5 million that are budgeted to be able to address the softball field issue, address the track, and then also recrown the football field. But the burning question becomes, the minute you're going to go and do the track update and do the crowning of the football field update, that is the time. You don't want to go and do those things without knowing what your decision regarding synthetic turf is. Because if you're going to make those decisions, as Rick pointed out, it's really going to make the synthetic turf decision for you. And so that's, I think, why it's important to be having the conversation and making that decision and going through the thought process right now.
Well, it's also not the first time we've talked about synthetic turf here. So it's not, maybe 2 years ago, I went around at the conference and talked to the turf companies. And my issue was durability. How long we're going to last? The degradation of those fields is the sun. So, man, those things start lasting 25, 30 years. That's a different picture. I thought they said 15.
Yeah, I think the stuff, the products that I think they're putting in now, and Max, you probably know this better than I, but the stuff that they're putting in now, I think you are looking at a 12 to 15 year life expectancy. I don't think you would have gone back too many years ago, where I think pretty much the advertised life expectancy was probably 8 to 10 years. And so definitely what is going in now is different than what was going in 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago, and the life expectancy is certainly a feature that's increasing with those.
Does anybody know, is the cost to replace it in 12, 15 years compared to putting it in the first time?
Yeah, so
Sometimes, you know, that's half the cost.
here's a rough example that was shared with me,
Yeah.
and this is not going out and getting quotes.
Yeah.
But when you're looking at a turf field, what you're really looking at is a $10 per square foot surface. $5 per square foot is the actual carpet that you're looking at. $5 per square foot is everything underneath that is the foundation for that carpet.
But the foundation,
Stays.
we're gonna have whether it's grass or turf.
No, it's a different foundation if it's turf. However, when your turf reaches its life expectancy, whether that be 12 or 15 years, or I think there's some schools that are maybe even inching a little more than that, they're taking off the top, the carpet, and they're putting down a new top. The foundation is staying. They're not touching anything aside from what the spectator in the stand sees when they go to that game. So roughly, when you're talking about it, I would say that people will tell you, or vendors that would submit bids, would tell you that the cost to replace the turf once it's in is probably 40 to 50 cents on the dollar from what it was when you actually
Yeah,
put it
that's
in.
what I was curious about.
Roughly. Now, again, as products evolve and whether the cost goes up or down is, you know, it all depends on the economics of it, but it certainly has some variability to it.
So I wrote down prioritize too. That was my first thought, was we need to prioritize, we need to get everything, but we should prioritize everything that we might want. And then you start at the top and you figure out where's the money that we have, where's the rest going to come from, and then we decide what we can go ahead and do. And I think as far as, if we stop talking about a football field and start talking about an athletic field, and then we start looking at student usage, it's not just a question of the football team uses it in the fall and then it sits empty the rest of the year. What is the student usage? What can we get out of this for boys and girls? So we get past Title IX as far as feeling like we're too heavily weighted that way. You've got gym classes, you've got softball in the spring, you've got, you know,
Community ed offerings.
community ed offerings,
Yes.
adult activities, adult touch football leagues, or whatever. So when you get into that, then I think you begin to see it in a broader picture, and that's why it should be, we need to start calling it an athletic field if we go with turf.
And I think, Rick, just to piggyback what you're saying though, I think it's valuable to remember, right now, your description of that field is accurate. That field right now is used and it's preserved to be able to use it for our varsity football games.
Right.
And part of that is because of the surface.
They tear it up all the time.
Well, you just can't
It's
have
football,
that.
yeah. It's football.
Number one, we're in Minnesota, and
Yeah.
so we have winter, but you just can't have that much activity on it.
Right.
And so, right now, what we have, we are limited because truly, in a typical year, that field, we don't allow anyone on
Right.
it in the summer.
Right.
It sits there waiting for that use in the fall.
And that's, in a sense, a sad situation that you've got that much land that we can't use or don't use. And if there's a way of turning that around and then selling that to the community, I know it's a tough sell because as soon as you say turf, people are going to go, oh, you know, is that a want or a need? And, we'd have to be able to sell it.
But community ed activities don't justify Title IX, do they? I thought Title IX was what went on with students in the school.
Yeah, so, I mean...
Like more in our programs?
Yeah, community ed isn't going to really be a factor. I mean, no...
I think that they use it as a nice thing.
Yeah.
But that's a selling point to the community.
Right.
You know, these are ways it'll be used other than...
And I'll be quite frank with you, there's nothing with our track and football field, there's nothing there that gives us any exposure to Title IX with that. So the real issue comes down to our softball complex. Let's just be real frank about what it is we're talking about. There really isn't a Title IX exposure with the track and the football field.
And we've had softball written into the budget. It's on our
Absolutely.
budget plan. So I feel comfortable saying we're committed to the softball being done. That's not.
And I
That's
just
not a
I
question.
want to make sure we frame this
Right.
correctly because we already have dollars budgeted to put in a new track, to recrown a football field, to flip our softball fields and put up some sort of a space, grandstand space. So those dollars are there. And they're budgeted, they're going to be allocated, those projects are going to go forward. What we really need to get our heads around is what Rick is talking about with that complex and how do we want to use it? This is the time to be able to go and make the decision about a synthetic surface and maximize that usage that is associated with that. Regardless, if the answer ultimately is no to a synthetic surface, that doesn't mean that the track isn't going to get replaced. That doesn't mean that the softball project doesn't go. That doesn't mean that the football field doesn't get recrowned. All those things are going to go.
Right.
It just really comes down to this question about that synthetic surface and if that's viable or is that the direction that we want to go.
I don't know, maybe is a concern that, because Title IX does lay out everything from your grandstands to your bleachers to your restrooms, those things which are built into the draft renderings, and granted they're only draft. But I don't know, is maybe a concern that would we skimp on anything to add in more dollars for other things? And I think maybe that's what the question is, whereas there are actually kind of standards that we have to, so I am hopeful that we wouldn't do that. I mean, I don't think we're going to take away from softball to make sure we have a turf football field. I think it's saying we need to get the cost for what's it going to take to do softball and the track. What do we have left? And then what Eller's presented with those funding options doesn't make sense. I mean, I don't think, and hopefully we would not ever skim back on what, and I hate the word deserve, but what we have to do for equity. And maybe that's what some of the questions are, is we don't want that to happen, and I agree, I would never want us to pull from that to have turf, right? I mean, that doesn't make sense, but it's just what is it gonna cost, what is left, and what are those funding options to do it at this time? That's how I see it, but.
Well, I think we need to investigate everything, and this is a perfect time for us to be thinking about where we're headed here, because we're not halfway down a channel and we haven't got ourselves stuck on anything, but it's not good for us not to look at everything either.
And I just want to, one other thing just to throw in there about like the track, for instance. If you don't do something, eventually it gets to the point where you can't use it. And that's true of anything in the school. If you don't keep things up, if you don't keep the football field up and gets to the point where we can't play football on there anymore and have to play all our games away, or if the track gets so bad you can't even practice on it or have meets. So those are the things we have to keep up. The softball field has to be kept up. For safety reasons and for whatever else, but so I just thought about the track when you mentioned that is a priority, because if it falls apart, we can't use it.
Good conversation.
So the other thing I just want to make sure that the board is fully aware of, there is a community group that I do believe is willing to bring some private dollars to part of this facility improvement discussion. I think that those dollars would be significant in nature. And I mean, I would like to continue to have some conversations with them and see where that goes. But I think that that's another piece to this that is out there as well, that there is some significant interest in potentially bringing some private dollars to be able to help with some of this. So I will keep that conversation going. So what I'm hearing the next steps to this is to continue working through the budget side of this and start getting together the formal information for the board to be able to evaluate these projects. And what I'm hearing is that there's a desire to be able to evaluate them as standalone projects versus putting them all in as one project, to be able to break them out and look at softball as softball, look at track as track, look at football field as football field, and be able to look at them as individual standalone projects.
What's the cost of crown versus what's the cost of?
Yep. And I'm assuming what
and length of term, that like the crown, how long does the crown last?
Yep.
Just all the data.
Yep. And I'm assuming what the board also would like to see then also is some sort of estimate as to what our current labor costs are to keep up with paint and cutting and work that we're doing on our current surface, compared to maybe what some other schools are experiencing that have made the switch, what they're experiencing as far as not only a cost as far as custodial costs, but also the people costs. I mean, there's always a dollar amount to pay employees, but there's also the labor hours, and those are two different, you can look at those costs differently, I guess, is my point.
And I think the usage, kind of like what we're sharing, I think looking at what could be the usage expansion if we did have turf or not, does it change it?
Do we have any, you mentioned New London, do they have any local district modeling of what they actually have done? You know, we can also talk about the things we can do, but if you look at New London and every other school that's got turf in and they really haven't done anything, you know, are we going to be drastically different than that? You know, we'd like to say we can be, but is that a realistic thing? Have they added more activity to their field since it's transitioned?
Got it. I'm following you there. Yes, I was.
Simplify that.
I wasn't with you there at the beginning, but I follow where you go.
I came through.
There you go. Okay. Other questions or other things specifically that the board would like to be able to take a look at in order to at least further the conversation, or to be able to keep thinking about where things are going?
Are there other places that have turf that you could access to find out after they've had it like 5, 6, 10 years? What repair costs are and upkeep for turf that's been in for multiple years?
Yep. Minnewaska's had theirs for several years now.
Has NLS had theirs? SOC has had theirs the longest, and then NLS, and then Minnewaska. Is that those are the nearest ones? Is that the order, or is it different, Max?
SOC Center played their first football game in 2012.
Okay.
So then would have been, well, Alexandria when they built their new school. So I'm not sure what year that would have been, but they may have been before Sauk Center. You can check on that. But Sauk Center was 2012, New London Spicer, and then Minnewaska, I believe.
You could also check St. John's for football and their baseball fields and St. Ben's for softball, because they've had some longevity, at least at St. John's.
And I do know, like, to answer Thomas's question, the people that you talk to that have them can't believe how much they're used. So, like,
I can imagine that, but that's just good data to have to actually say these are the events that we are now hosting that previously we never did.
Yeah.
Because I can believe we can, but it's just another thing that.
Because the perception is exactly what Rick's saying. Why would you do that for 4 or 6 football games?
No, correct.
Because that's all you can use it for right now. As soon as it's synthetic turf, then it's no longer that anymore. It's from the moment school starts until people go to bed.
Yeah.
Well, Sauk Center's already got one that's 8 years old. That's part of my curiosity. So how many years has it been an emergency to tear the track apart? At least as long as I've been on the board. This has been the same exact discussion we've had on that track for 8 years.
So
my curiosity is maybe those turfs really do last 20 or 25 years. You know what I'm saying? And which means that that's a whole different cost picture. But that would be my curiosity. If it's 8 years old and you go there and that from everybody's perspective, it looks like it did before. And I thought when we were at St. Edgar's school that they were talking about the only thing they thought they had to put down maybe was some more rubber that goes in there.
They have to refill rubber, and then you have patch
And it was
kits.
it didn't sound like a very costly thing.
Not really. And the maintenance, I think, is the patch kits, and like you kind of sew them in. But when you look at somebody having to mow fields and paint lines, like what is, like you were talking about the labor and the hours spent. So that also factors you have to take into consideration. But it didn't seem like.
So I caught Brad Walters one day in the hallway. And so I just asked him, because typically I think Brad is the one who does a bulk of the football field, striping, cutting, that type of stuff. And so I just asked him, I said, Brad, from the time that we're getting ready, geared up for fall sports through football season, how much of your week is spent out on that field? And he kind of shook his head. He said, well, Matt, I feel kind of bad saying it, but probably 3 days. I said, so you're telling me 24 of your 40 hours is out doing stuff for that football field? He said, yeah, that's probably a pretty good estimate. Now that's just off the cuff. That's just
and that's just preparation for football season to end of football season. That's not the rest of the summer of watering and fertilizer and mowing and upkeep.
Yes, I'm talking to as far as that first week of August and when you're starting to get the field lined and stuff for practice and all that stuff. So yes, it was a very small space of time. So to me that's significant when you start talking about putting that type of not only a labor cost but an actual people hours to a space that is really not utilized that greatly. So there is a significant cost with it. So,
just out of curiosity, Max, going back to my football days, but the bulk of our practice took place offside the football field. I assume that still takes place, so you don't practice on the field very often. If it was a turf field, would you be able to practice there more often?
So I think what our needs would be for the district would be one additional grass field, whether that would be for junior high and or varsity. So if I was the football coach, I would probably go practice on grass on times when we're going to go play an away game on a grass, and then we would just move our junior high or whatever onto the turf. So I think currently right now we have 3, right? One of them got taken over because of construction. Right. So somebody would be on that field to practice or have a lower level game or something every single day after
school. It might free up some space elsewhere for something else.
For sure. Like it would be after school every single day it would be used.
Yeah.
And I think that's safe to say probably in the spring as well.
Yeah, I think the more informed we are, regardless of the decisions, yes or no, that we can say, here's why. And we clearly have it calculated out, because I also think if whatever the decision is, if it's a close call, we have to look at ourselves 10, 15 years from now. We've made this decision, then it's a long-term decision, you know, so I'm glad we're having these conversations, and I think we're going to have to look hard at the details.
One thing you should add to that budget is the additional field that we would not have to replace.
That's true.
True.
You know, because we have that practice field that's in the JV baseball field. And with the project, we knew we lost the junior high football field. If you did a turf field on there, you could completely remove the need for that because the junior high football could go right over to it.
And were you going to irrigate that one too? So that would be significant.
Well, going forward, I think you're going the right direction, Mr. Superintendent. Just
Well, and I think I have
moving ahead.
I have an understanding of what you're looking for and where we need to move in the future. So the other piece, I do just want to circle back to the softball a little bit. So there was a rendering included in this. It is just something to get on paper so that we can get kind of the conversation going. I don't know what the architectural term is for the steeple on top, but I told them to remove it unless there was some reason that it needed to be there. So they were going to take that part out. If you're into steeples or whatever that architectural term is, that we can revisit that. But so just to give you an idea, this is kind of what is at least in concept what Neil and his group is starting with. The feedback that I gave them on this is that we would like a more restroom space if we could do that. At the minimum, if they could have 4 stalls in the women's restroom and 2 stalls and 2 urinals in the men's. That was the one piece of feedback when I first looked at is if we could increase that, that would be ideal. So they're working with that. What I'd like to do at the business meeting for November, because again, I need to restate this. The softball fields are going to get done. It's irrelevant to all the conversation we were just having. It's actually irrelevant to Jody's financing tools because we have the funds budgeted. So what I'd like to do is at the business meeting this month, I would like 2 board members to be assigned to the softball field project. So then we can get Neil connected and get some more people involved in the conversation. So know that is something that that's going to happen here at the end of the month in order to keep moving things forward. Okay.
And I'm looking forward to something overview of what the whole thing would look like.
Sure.
That's what I'm looking for, where this building would be, where the grants, so that's.
Yep.
I'm able to see that.
Yep. And so the other piece to this is, if you've been around, I noticed that they were out here today. So Stantec is the surveying company that we used for the large project. They're back out doing some stuff for Neil to get things finalized with elevations and utilities and all that stuff. So they were out today. They were supposed to be finishing up this week with all their site measurements and calculations, get that off to Neil next week, and then he and his team will be able to take that and do some more of exactly what you're talking about, Rick, looking at where is the closest connection point for a water hookup and how might that drive our decision as to how we want to position a restroom facility and get that overhead view to be able to see how it flows with softball and still could be used for track and football and stuff like that. So that's coming.
That's one thing we had talked about in the past is that having concessions available on both sides, so it could be more multi-use. So
yep. Oh, and thank you. That was the other feedback that I gave him on this too, was that like right now where you see concession ticketing, there's one large window. And the other feedback I told him is that we should be able to open up the side facing the track and sell concession and tickets, or close that and open up the side facing softball and stuff. So they were reworking and repositioning that type of stuff as well on that. But once that whole site survey and everything is complete, then Neil will have a lot more information to be able to start placing things and doing some logistical things. And then we're going to get more people together to finalize kind of what that plan looks like. Okay. Other questions about facility projects?
what is the goal date to have a decision on this?
Well, I would really like to see January as a time where we have a idea of a direction we want to go. I really would like to see the softball work coincide with finishing up of the large facility project. In my mind, it would be great if we could also coordinate the track work to do that. It would kind of be a combination of a large facility project all at once. If that's the timeline we're looking for, then that January, February is going to be important to be able to get everything lined up and ready to go.
So then a follow-up question. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, with that being kind of a quick turnaround, where do you see how we have education to our community about some of the decisions and processes that are taking place between now and you have to answer right now? Maybe I'm just saying, I think we're gonna have to figure out the communication plan because it is a quick turnaround and being able to pass this information.
Right, and I think I agree with the fact that it's a quick turnaround when you're talking about actually coming up with the logistics of how things are gonna work. I would agree with Bruce, and I've heard other people here tonight say it, that I believe the track has been talked about for many years. I believe the softball needs have been talked about for many years.
And the football field.
And so I don't know that any of these things are just out of the blue, that the community's going to hear that our track is being replaced. I believe the conversation was going on before I came in 2018. So do we have to continue communicating? Absolutely. And as soon as we know details and direction, we have to get that out and we have to get people the information. But I do believe there has been a dialogue going on for some time that this is something that's a need, and it needs to be budgeted for. That's why the district has budgeted the way it has. It's not very often that districts have $1 million saved up in LTFM.
Right.
This has been intentional over the course of several years to be able to get those dollars available.
Yeah, and I think communicating that will probably be the most critical.
Sure.
And it's more coming from people might perceive it as a quick, because I mean, I looked at my notes from prior being on the board at facilities meetings. We've talked about this.
Yeah.
But it's that they understand the process. So yeah, fair.
And what I was going to say is it is important to coordinate this with what we're doing right now, because we don't want to finish this and then decide, oh, we really wanted to put this building over here. And now it's not going to work because we did this. We should be working together.
Right.
Because where we decide to put this one building may decide how we work the parking situation.
Yes.
And so.
But I want to be really careful that it doesn't look like this was a plan to put the two together. What we're talking about here is really totally separate from what we just did. Coordinating with work and stuff, that's really the only similarity at all, because these were all talked about before. And my concern would be, I would hate to be in any position that we're not getting something done that we should be getting done because we start getting a whole bunch of flack about just adding to the project. That's not what's happening here. These are independent items.
It's a separate project.
The only coordination would be the work.
And Bruce, I would take that a step further, and I would assure everybody that there are no bond dollars from the $16 million project. None of those dollars are what we're talking about. Those are not the budgeted dollars that we are talking about. The district has budgeted other funds to be able to take care of the track, the softball field, the recrowning of the football field. So I just want to be very clear. There is no $16 million project came in under budget, and so now we're expanding our project. That's not what's going on here. These are completely separate projects that the district has been talking about and budgeting for, and now it's getting time to execute the plan.
Right, and it's a separate project that doesn't need to have to wait until everything else is done.
Exactly.
Go with it now, let's go with it now.
Exactly.
So.
At one point, we talked about turf for the softball diamond. Is that still an option? And is there any research on how well that's accepted or injury rates on softball fields?
Yeah, Maggie, you talked to the softball coach at St. Ben's. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So Rachel Click is a softball coach, and we went through a facility completely overhaul, and we put in a turf softball field, and then they also have a natural softball field. So I just reached out to her to just say, hey, give me your feedback. Like, what's kind of the feeling? How's this going? And so like she said, for pros, because obviously softball is different than football, but she said so much less maintenance. I mean, you're not dealing with the watering, the dragging, the forking, like she had a whole bunch of stuff written down. Just game day prep is much more minimal. Drainage, obviously, you can play a lot sooner. They'll be able to get on the fields when Minnesota, that's pretty significant. So the games, the amount that they're able to play in practice has significantly increased. The surface is about, she said 10 to 12 degrees warmer. And so I don't know if that's different than, I think like our soccer fields were closer to 15 or 20. So it might be a difference on, I don't know, size or whatever it is. But there's a difference. So that's also partly why. And then also rental opportunities. Like this is something that I hadn't thought of. Like to be able to flip things quickly, you don't have as many people actually having to come and prep and set up. You can flip things a lot quicker. She did say that her athletes, she said about 84% said they prefer the turf. She said some are kind of just more traditional and kind of like that feel of grass. So I think some of it's a personal preference as well. But she said, and she was an excellent college athlete, and she kind of was hesitant at first too, but she said she would make the decision all over again for turf, like hands down. I brought up the question about injuries too, because as you read some of the stuff that Matt had shared, because there's a lot of information out there, she said she's seen no difference with injuries as well. I'm just kind of thinking what else she had said, but
What about the play itself? I think the thing that I would have question is, does the softball bounce different? Is it a different kind of game or baseball?
So there's a couple things with that. In talking with Neil, who was out, and he actually has brought a whole assortment of turf samples of 1 foot square things, and it gave me an education. And maybe Max knew this, but so turf that goes on a softball and a baseball field is different than turf that goes on a football field. The length of strand that is in those different fields is different, and the amount of sand and other fill product is different as well. Because when you hit a baseball or a softball on turf, you don't want that splash effect to it. So it is different. The other piece that is most noticeably different in those two surfaces is there is a additional pad that typically is laid over the top of the foundation of a soccer or football field surface. That pad is not laid on a baseball or softball surface, because you don't want that bounce effect. You want that bounce effect for being tackled on an artificial surface. You don't want that bounce effect if you're taking a ground ball at second base. So they are slightly different, and the costs with putting them in baseball fields and softball fields are cheaper because there typically isn't a pad underneath them. Whereas that soccer and football surface would be slightly more expensive because of that pad.
And things have probably changed. I know when the Metrodome was first built, the ball would hit the ground and it was just going, but that was a football field too.
Yeah.
So I just wondered how that might affect.
And she did, and this is personal preference, so this is not data by any means. This is someone's perspective, but she had said, they don't get those natural field hops like you would on a dirt with divots and things like that. She said, but for her, she likes the natural bad hops. That's part of the game. But she's like, but it's obviously safer too, because you're not getting, these crazy balls off a lip and of a bound and breaking someone's nose. And so it's a preference, but she's like, you're not getting those crazy. It's probably safer in that respect from the bad bounces.
But are we talking about the whole field, or were you talking about just the infield?
So we're talking about infield.
Okay.
Yeah, is what we would be looking at, and potentially doing that in the baseball stadium as well, as putting the infield with turf. And so, Cheryl, to answer your question, both of those absolutely would still be part of the conversation.
Because I believe when we first talked about it, the entire cost of the varsity field would be $300,000.
For the entire softball field?
I believe it was the entire field. $300,000 must be the entire field.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Because I think also, doesn't Little League use a softball size?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Little League uses the softball diamonds also.
Yep.
So it's multi-use also.
Yep.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Good topic, whoever brought that one up.
Any other questions? Okay. Jody, I think that's it. If you're still there, we're going to move on to COVID.
She's not there.
Thank you.
I didn't realize that.
Unless you want to stick around for.
Everyone.
All right, take care.
Okay, bye guys.
Bye.
Bye.
I didn't realize she was still up.
I figured she was sleeping.
We maybe should have let her go a little bit.
No, I think it's good for her to hear
See what we're talking about.
the entire conversation too. I think that will help. It will definitely help me because now she's heard the entire conversation too. If there are pieces that I am forgetting, she will be able to remind me. So that's helpful. Let's talk just a little bit about COVID-19 update. There's not a lot to report on this. Both buildings are still both in hybrid learning modes. All the counties around us, along with the state of Minnesota, the case rates are going in the wrong direction. We are still managing with our staff is staying, for the most part, very relatively healthy. I don't want to jinx that, but that has been good. Our school nurse has been remarkable as far as working with both buildings and doing some contact tracing and really tracking down, communicating with families. And so that has been going well. You're hearing, I think, every day in the news of additional districts that are moving to some form of remote or distance learning. At this point, the conversation here is to stay in our hybrid mode, and we will reevaluate that on the 19th of November, which is not this Thursday, but the following. And I think, we'll see where we are at. One of the things that the group has talked about is potentially doing some form of a extended, scripted, scheduled remote learning period from when we return to school after Christmas break until the second Friday back. So a 2-week remote learning extension. And then that would bring us back for the last full week of semester 1. We would be back in person, at least in the hybrid mode. And part of that is just really to be able to recognize that over that Christmas break, we are going to have families that are going to travel. They're going to be doing different things. And is it in everybody's best interest just to have a natural 2-week period where we would just be in distance mode? That conversation will continue this Thursday at our COVID team meeting. It will probably be part of the conversation on the 19th. The timeline that group has really talked about is getting information out to families by that November 19th, November 20th date, if that's something that we are looking at doing. So I guess that's my question to the board. I'm curious what people around the table think of potentially exploring that or doing something like that. I know that there's one other district in the area that has already put stuff out there that they are planning on doing that very practice. And I guess I'm just curious what thoughts are on that.
Personally, I think I think you've been doing a good job, all of you guys, trying to figure this thing out. And I just have to be advised to know what's going on. I don't know that personally I would venture in a guess. If you think it's best, I'm with you. If you think we should do something else, I'm with you. So that's kind of my position.
I would say that, from what I've heard, other districts, especially to the northern part of the county and we're doing an excellent job here, really, compared to some schools. They're just a mess.
Yeah, they are.
And so I congratulate administration for being able to keep us on track here so far. And we may have to shift something different, but I think we've done a great job so far compared to what I've seen going on around us. So congratulations and thank you.
We had a Stearns County Sheriff's Mounted Reserves meeting last night, and conversation got around to what was going on at the schools. And some of the things that Melody is also a member of that. And some of the things that we mentioned, the sheriff looked at his deputy and he says, I'm moving to Paynesville. So I think we're doing an excellent job overall.
I think whatever the decision is, the more lead time obviously we can give families and guardians is the best. I think that's where a big challenge comes in, is that, you know, if somebody has little kids, they're working out of the home, people need lots of prep time. And if we can give them that in an ideal situation, but the administration team has given me personally nothing to second guess the decisions you've made thus far. I think they've been founded in data. You've been in communication with the right people. So I think kind of what your guidance is back to us. I mean, a lot of, you know, you look at colleges and different places, they're trying to figure out too, like, is the time during the holidays, if you're going to have that break, we know people are going to travel. I mean, we can believe all we want that people aren't going to. I mean, it does, people probably will. I mean, so there naturally might be, it's going to happen anyway, being prepared, I guess.
Okay, well, keep thinking about it. If there are compelling thoughts one way or the other, please email, communicate those. You can email David or Mary or myself or Matt Dickhausen. Rachel Brown is the school nurse and she's on that group too. So think about it. And if you come up with a question, concern, thought regarding it, send someone an email. I know this Thursday it'll be a topic at the team meeting, and I know the 19th it'll also be a topic. So that's kind of the window we're looking at right now, and then we'll go from there. Okay. Strategic planning.
Can I ask another question?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
So the executive orders that just came out,
yeah,
and they have to be implemented by the 30th, I think.
Yep.
And just keeping us apprised of.
Yep.
Because it seems like already the message we got from MSBA was that potentially some of that stuff is shifting. So.
It is. I have gotten the impression that it is a little fluid.
Okay.
I did meet with the union president regarding the whole prep time. I do think we have a solution that will work right now for us. So I'm very happy about that. I know there are a lot of districts right now that are struggling as to what they're going to do. And I'll be perfectly frank with everybody. I think you're going to see, if this stays as is, I think what districts may be forced to do is actually shorten their school day by a half hour. And I don't think that's what's in the best interest of kids. So I do believe we have a solution. I think we have something that'll work, but it's going to be something that we're going to continue to have to talk about and be in communication with each other about in order to make it work. I do anticipate, especially after the conference call last Friday, I do believe there's going to be a variation of what was in the original executive order and what's going to come out before November 30th when it's supposed to be implemented. I think there was some oversight there, and I have all the faith that it's going to be corrected. I don't think there was any intention or malice behind it, and so I do think it'll get fixed.
Because that's potentially too, is if there's some of these executive orders, and if after Christmas break we need time for staff and admin to figure out some of these things, that might be, you know, even though the timing, but I'm guessing that time is going to be pushed back. I mean, I don't know, like.
Yeah, I wasn't even thinking about it from that angle, but yeah, that is also something that there may be some value in,
right,
as well. Absolutely. Anything else with COVID? Okay, let's go on to strategic planning. I do want to just pull up one document. So I believe I shared this with everybody or emailed it to people this morning or today. There was a document called Strategic Planning Schedule -BOE. So here's what I have right now for strategic planning. So our first session is tomorrow evening. We'll start at 6:30. I have Maggie, Thomas, and Cheryl assigned to that. You should have received a calendar invite with the Google Meet link on there. So please join us on Google Meet at 6:30. Myself and Mary will be at that. The 12th, I have Ashley and Bruce. If there's a board member that wants to join as a third, you're more than welcome. I just don't want 4 board members. I don't want a quorum.
See, is it a possibility I could flip off of Wednesday to
Yeah.
either Thursday or
What do you want?
doesn't make a difference. Something just gonna be up for me yesterday. Or
Okay.
today for tomorrow.
Do you want, can I put you on Thursday?
Sure.
Owen or Ian?
Owen.
Thank you. Is there a third member who wants to join us tomorrow night? Okay. We can certainly have.
If you want a member, I can come, but I don't see why.
It's
I don't know
completely
that's
up to you.
beneficial. I thought we were gonna more listen.
You are.
Board members, so.
Yep, that's what we're gonna
we
get to
don't
next
have it
is.
in, but we wanna hear from people, and you're gonna run the meeting,
Yep,
so I guess if we go two, we go two.
okay.
But everybody's on there, right?
Yes, I believe I put everybody on here. If I didn't, it was my error. I wasn't
Then
trying
don't
to
you
leave
think
it.
we're okay?
Yep, I agree.
Okay.
Everybody,
If a third wants to join us on the 16th, you're more than welcome to do that. I have no problem with it. I just wanted to get everyone on here once, and I just do not want a quorum at the planning meeting, so we're limited to 3.
if you're not on the list and you're gonna join, you have to let Matt know.
Just let me know, and I'll be more than happy to send you an invite to any of them that don't have 3 members on. Okay? Right now, for tomorrow night, we have 22 that I sent invites out to for the meeting tomorrow. And our numbers for the 12th and 16th are significantly lower. I believe one has 8 and one has 7. So we still have time, especially on the 16th. If you guys are out and about and know people, and if somebody, you mention it and they don't know anything about it and they want an invite, just give me their name and a phone number. I'm more than happy to call them to get their email address that they want me to send it to, and I will send it to whoever wants. They don't need to be parents. This has gone out to our Chamber of Commerce list, to all members of the chamber. It's gone out to the Community Foundation, so it just can be community members. It just can be people that want to help improve Paynesville area schools. It does not need to be just to parents. So let me know if you want to. Or
And when did it get to the foundation and everybody?
What's that?
When did it get to the foundation and?
Oh.
A couple days ago?
Yeah, so I emailed everybody on the chamber list and to the foundation last week.
Okay.
I'll follow up.
Wednesday.
I didn't
Dick
get a call from-
Dick Johnson is registered for tomorrow night, so I
Okay.
know that he saw it.
I'll follow up with the foundation and
Yeah. So yeah, there's still time. So if you know of somebody who wants to join us on the 12th or the 16th, let me know and I'm more than happy to send them invites.
Okay.
At the bottom of this, the session notes, that there's a link for that. You will have access to all those. All 3 sessions are located at that location. So you can go in there at any point and check that out and see. Those session notes is what we are going to actually build the final survey that members that participated in these meetings are going to go in and priority rank different items. Will be based off of those session notes. Board member role, the responsibilities as far as when you participate, like Bruce said, I really am thinking that it's going to be just just listening, and you don't have to present anything. People may have questions for you, and if they do, by all means, answer them. And if you don't know the answer, it's okay to say, I don't know the answer, but there will certainly be things, I'm sure, that they will ask me that I will just have to go back and do some homework on and get back to them on. So there really is nothing formal for board members to do. It's really just to be visible as part of the session and to be a listening ear is really what it comes down to.
Okay, so are they dividing into smaller groups or not? They're not gonna do that? Okay.
No, we're not. So tomorrow
fine.
night, for instance, we have there were 22 people registered. So we will run one group.
Okay.
In that 22. I will facilitate that, and between myself and Mary, we're gonna be taking notes on the notes document. But we'll run that group as a group of 22. I think that'll be very manageable. If we got into if there were 35 registered for one session, it probably would make more sense to break them into two groups in order to give everybody an opportunity to be heard and to participate. So, okay.
Just for me, I'm probably not going to say a word at those because I go back to the last one we did, and I might have been in on 2 of these already. Sometimes when the board says certain things, it can shut discussion down. And they all said that. We had a group that we hired last time. So even though we all want to get involved in a discussion here, everybody can listen to us discuss, but we don't want to shut down input from the public. So personally, I'll be there. Probably not going to say a word.
And I think last time wasn't something mentioned to that effect too, so people didn't say, well, how come the school board's sitting there and they're not saying anything?
Right.
That's on purpose.
Yep.
So,
Yep. And I think they announced that.
Yeah.
As you said, yeah.
Yeah, whoever the board members are that are at the session, I will introduce you. And I will make sure that they know that you guys are board members and stuff. So that will be part of the intro and the welcome and all that stuff. And I will be very clear with them that board members' role in this is really more just a listener than an actual participant.
I know that was just something that came up all the time, and they said all of a sudden they get to where the board members are participating a lot in the discussions, and it just steers one way, and you really didn't get a good feel anymore.
I have a question. Are faculty and staff members doing this separately, or are they also?
So they've already done it.
So they did. Okay.
Yeah. So they have already. So the issue was February 17th or something like that last year was a in-service day, and faculty and staff went through this exact same process. And then March 23rd or March 16th was supposed to be our first one, 16th, 23rd, and something else. And then I've been dragging my feet because I wanted to do these in person versus doing them virtually. And it's time to just throw the white flag up and do them virtually. So then the last thing that's on here for strategic planning, there's just a link to the presentation that is going to happen at these. You can, take a look at those, and that's what we're going to work through. We'll start at 6:30. Realistically, I think they'll finish around 7:30. For sure, I will make the commitment to everybody that by 8 o'clock we will be done. So probably it's going to be about 60 minutes is what I'm thinking. So.
Awesome.
Okay. So let's see. That means Maggie and Cheryl, I will see you tomorrow night at 6:30 in whatever Google Meet room you are in.
Good luck.
Request for information. Last item. Do we have anything?
Anybody?
A lot of what we covered tonight.
I think we had an excellent.
Yeah.
We covered a lot.
Excellent.
This is perfect.
Okay.
All right. We're done.